Picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Send a coded message for Starfleet Commander, Priority 1. Federation science vessel Grissom arriving, Genesis planet, Mutara sector to begin research. JTS to Bond Commanding.
Aye, sir. Coding now.
Welcome back. It's week 5. Fabulous week 5 on the Grissom build. And the excitement just doesn't stop around here, folks. Catch you up on the weekend's doings. First of all, I went through and I put the big Bondo on this joint here, and that is the actual body putty. It is not the spot filler. It is the body putty. It's thicker, quicker, easier, more seductive, to quote the Jedi Master. It is thicker, and it will dry rock hard and fill in gaps and all of that kind of stuff. It makes the spot putty look positively wimpy by comparison, and that's what it should do. So that was in. I've troweled it into the wound and let it act like a bandage, and then over top of that, I kind of filed it down, got this nice sharp angle out of it, and then I went over top of it with the spot putty to fill in some holes and some divots. And that's the one that's mostly done. Here's where we were at this morning. I just put a fresh coat of the spot putty over top of the Bondo here, and we're letting that cure. And we're going to let that cure up. And the next thing we're going to do is pop the nacelles on, because I realize there's a lot of work that has to happen in these areas. And when you're building a model, or much like most things in life, whether you're cooking a dinner, you can either clean as you go, or you can wait till you're done making your entire mess and then clean up all at once. Well, there's a kind of a mixture here at both, because I know this side has been cleaned up. This is good to go. But I know I'm going to mess it up more when it comes time to attach the nacelle on there. So there's only so much I want to clean up, because I'm going to end up going over this area again and messing it up again. So I clean it up to make that much, make it a little bit easier on myself. But really, I know that I'm going to be at it again. So what I'm going to do, since the nacelle has to sit on top of here, is I'm leaving, some of the mess there. Here's the finished side. And when I get ready to put the nacelle on here, there's going to be an ugly edge that needs to be addressed again. So there's no sense getting this down to perfection, or as close as I'm going to get to it, knowing that I'm going to end up, stepping on it again. So I'm going to go ahead and trim some of these wires down and put the nacelles on today. And won't that be fun? There is, and this was pointed out again to me, I knew it was there, but it was pointed out to me by a faithful viewer and a good friend who was asking me about the little area that goes here. There is a curve. Let me show you on the small kit. There is a curve right here that happens between the saucer and the nacelle that fills in this angle, this curved angle. That's not here on the kit, and it was not provided as a part. But luckily, it can be scratch built easily enough. And I'm kind of glad I don't have that part, because I know I can scratch build it. But B, I don't know how wide this needs to be until the nacelles are in place. The one thing I've discovered is that these two sides aren't exactly symmetrical. It was a handcrafted kit. It's not, the measurements aren't exact left and right. So what this is going to allow me to do is put the nacelles in, and then I can scribe these little fillet pieces in place, and I know they'll fit that way. That was thing one that happened over the weekend. Thing two involves what's going to happen up in here. If I can turn that around. And here's thing two. I'm going to build a little wee shuttle bay, and good friend Keith over at Cosmic Scale Models. You know him, you love him, you can't live without him. He sent me an STL file for just this shuttle. And the problem with it is that his STL file is meant to be the 350 scale Oh, let me get the camera up where you can see it. The 350 scale shuttle for this era. Now, I had to blow it up. I had to enlarge it a bit to fit this kit, but I didn't know exactly how much I needed to blow it up. So I did a range, and it ended up being it ended up being the smallest one. The next smallest one I did. But I filled these on a build plate, and I sized one up, printed it, duplicated it, sized it up a bit again, just to make sure, because I wanted to see what kind of fit. And they all kind of fit inside the doorway, but it's a question of which one is the more comfortable fit, which one looks the best. By the time you put this down on top of it, I felt these were too big. Oops! Now I've gone and done it. Hold on, let me put the camera down. There we go. That the small one, the 350 scale, was way too small. I believe this is bigger than a 350. I don't know what the exact size of it is, but by the time I put them all together, it turned out that this one seemed to be the best fit. Had enough clearance all the way around. Now, because of the lighting that has to happen for and again, here we go. Sorry about the shaky cam. But the lighting that has to happen for these side markers, I'm going to make like the indication of a shuttle bay here. This ring of lights is actually, depending on the deck plans that you see online, there has never been an official Canon deck plan of this that I'm aware of. Could be, but I'm not aware of it. So, some people might think, oh, these shuttle bays are joined up. There is a common area in the center. That's neither here nor there for this point, because I think I'm going to put some fake doors on the insides of the shuttle bays here that'll help disguise these lights, and then I can make up a faux shuttle bay for the front one. And all we really need to do is have this sitting in here as kind of an atmospheric thing, the shape of the shuttle. So I'll mock up some walls and whatnot, but we'll get into that later. What I'm more interested in was having the shuttle be the right size for the rest of this kit, and Keith's STL file allowed me to size that up and down. So this is, with all the wires sticking out of it, this is the USS Wires Akimbo. Okay, so I'm getting ready to do some important gluing here. I need to lift this up, put some epoxy in it, and then set it back down. And I'm being careful not to pinch any wiring. That's why I've kind of got the circuits running, so I can tell that both the red in front, which you can see now where my thumb is, and the strobe back here is working. So that means I haven't pinched any wiring. So I just need to open this up, get this, make sure this nacelle is nice and square with the top of the pylon, and that reveal is consistent. And it looks like it might need to come out just a hair, because I want these nacelles to be parallel to each other once they have set up. Okay, so I lifted this up, put some 5-minute epoxy in there, set it back down. I am taking every caution to square up this nacelle. The lights are still blinking. Yes, the red light is still on up front. We're going to let this cure for a good long time, and then there are gaps. English is my first language. There are gaps that will need to be filled right in here. That we can do with a combination of either putty and or tulip once that day comes. I do think there's a thicken because of this little lip right here. Let me zoom in on that. Okay, you can see that this lip right here. I'm going to need to fill in this area so that that lip is flat with the rest of the ship. That should probably have been notched into the cast part, so that it would also help you tell how far, and I need to zoom back out, how far this way or that way the engine needs to sit. Should have been taken care of with that, but I think I could put a strip styrene right in there, and that'll fill in that gap. But we're gonna let that sit for a while until we can flip the whole thing back over and wire in the other nacelle. Alrighty, so I've got the lights all turned on again, so to make sure I'm not pinching any wiring and everything seems to be working. I am gonna turn this overhead light off so that you can fully appreciate what's going on. You can see the green light up here and the strobe back here. Anybody who's ever built a starship knows this one thing, this one truth. Putting in one nacelle is, hard enough by itself, but it is nothing compared to putting the second nacelle in, because there's a whole level of complexity of making sure that the second nacelle is not only level and square, but it is level and square and plumb to the other nacelle. If you're only working with a ship with one nacelle, you're kind of taking the easy way out because you don't have to make it balance with anything else. Looking at the measurements and everything that I needed to do to make sure, now this was in the right place. One of the problems with this kit is that these nacelles have no pegs or slots or anything that will help them be positioned in the right place. You just kind of have to eyeball it, and then everything after that is a butt joint. And as you can see, this wants to do this deal. It wants to rock back and forth. I've got a high spot underneath there that I have done everything in my power to try to get rid of, and it seems to keep coming back. I thought maybe I was sitting on a resistor and pinching a wire. That is not the case. Everything has been well and truly channeled out here. So what I want to do now is do up the last batch of epoxy and then just kind of sit this thing nice and level into that bed of epoxy and let it cure itself. And I think that would be enough work for one day completely, because today I will have gotten both nacelles in and both of them wired in, and I'm starting to chase the wiring into the main saucer area, which is where all of this is going to come together in one happy starship. So let me see about tilting that back just a bit, slopping some 5-minute epoxy in here, setting this back down and letting it find its own level. Now the only thing I need to make sure of is that this overhang is consistent and it is square this way on the starship, so that it is the two nacelles are parallel to each other. Okay, I think I have worn this idea down to a nub, and it's time to just brace yourself and do it. I've worn away what I can get out of that hump in the center. I have mostly a level nacelle. Gauge it against the deck, it's level. I'm wondering if I need to clamp those down. Probably not. Got clamps here just in case I need it. So I am putting out some 5-minute epoxy. Gonna mix it up, slap it down, and cross my fingers and pray. Well, I think we may have found the pretty side. Any modeler that's made a model knows that when he's done, or he or she is done, that there is one side that definitely has a better look than the other. I think it's this one on this kit, which is nice because all of my ships have a tendency to face right to left or left to right, and I rather like the fact that this one's going the other way. But here you can see, maybe in detail, how off symmetrically this kit is. This area right here, between the nacelle and the start of the saucer, is larger on this side than it is on this side. And you would think if this was in the center, which it is, and it's round, and it is, these are both the same size, and they are using the same amount of overhang on both sides, and they do, that these two dimensions here would be even, and they're not. So, I've got a lot done today. I'm going to reward myself by maybe packing it in a bit early today because I got so much done. And, you know, one of these things where I don't want to press my luck. There's two more things I can do, though. I want to put this filler piece in here like I did under the other nacelle. I want to put that filler piece in, so I've got it drawn out. I'm going to cut this off and put it in there. And I think the last thing I want to do is to draw out these guys, which is the piece that will complete that curve. Get those guys drawn out, maybe get them installed. And you know what? I could probably cover over that channel since I'm done running wires. If I covered over that channel with some epoxy sculpt, that would be a great finish for today. Morning, everybody. It's Tuesday. Had one last bit of scratch building before I can flip this thing back over, and that is to putting these little fillet bits here that kind of flush out the saucer and go straight back and then curve into the nacelle there. And you can tell by me putting a finger here and then putting the same finger here how much of a difference we have in these two sides, even though we've got the same amount of overhang here as we do here. And this is coming down on the center of the saucer. All three of these centers are lined up. It's just, that's how the deck plate is designed. It's a little bit longer on one side than it is on the other, and that's really all there is to say about that. It just comes off as a little bit off, and that's the overall sculpt of this thing. I mean, looks like it was sculpted by hand and then made molds of, like, you know, every other garage kit in the world. It just is showing maybe some of the flaws or character of the nature of sculpting like this, because overall, my impression of it now that it's all together is how chunky it is. The pieces are fatter and thicker than maybe they should be, in comparison to, say, the 1000 scale kit, which was, you know, built by machines and, you know, CAD drawn, and then, you know, the molds were made by, or the tools were made by machines, where everything is a little bit thinner and finer and more delicate. For example, the pylons are thinner, just proportionately they're thinner. The pontoon is wider on the kit than it is here. It doesn't go back to quite as elegant a taper in the back, as this goes almost to a point, and the back end of this is much more blunt. Things like that. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, and what we're seeing is what happens when something is made by hand. Now, that's not a knock on it. That's just the way it is. But you can see what happens when you have something like that. You end up with maybe a discrepancy where it's not quite as symmetrical as you would like it to be. But now that those pieces are in, I'm going to flip this over, and we're going to do the final wiring that's going to allow me to wire up all the lights that make up the windows and the impulse engine and all of that. Okay, I'm working on the wiring for the saucer top. I want to be able to, because of the way the rest of this is wired, I want to be able to plug this in and set it down kind of last, and then work at it that way. I don't want to be, you know, working with a bunch of fiddly wires as I'm putting it down. So I put jacks on it, or plugs on it, and I always do this when I have two separate wires that I need to keep straight. is that I will put, you know, all connections have a male and a female end, and I'll put a female end on one and a male end on another. You would think most people, they would put the male end on both of these, or the female end on both of these. But by making them unique, that way when I plug them in the heat of battle, I cannot cross the voltage. I cannot mistakenly plug one into a connection that it's not meant to go in. So here is the because the strobes are non-resisted, I don't want to put 9 volts into them. So this is the strobe circuit, and it will plug into this strobe bulb. And now I need to coalesce all of these into one 9-volt circuit that I can also plug into that. And then we'll have everything wired, and I will lay it down in place, and we'll see what the thing finally looks like. Okay, all of the lights are on, and everybody is home. We'll start at the front. Strobe, strobe, strobe. Now some of this stuff is covered with tape still. Window lights, red and green marking lights, strobe, strobe, strobe way at the back. Red marking light, red marking light, red marking light, red at the back. If anything, I think I might want to, now that I see everything, green, 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 and the ones on the bottom of the deck here are there. They're just covered with tape. There's red, there's the impulse, there's the red light on that side. You can see it from underneath. Yes, the red light on that side. All the lights are lit. Now, I think what I'd like to do is actually decrease, and you can see the what's going on here. What I'd like to do, I believe, is decrease the number of these. I think that's not only going to save me some power, because that 9-volt battery is not going to last forever powering all of that, but it would also knock down some of the way too brightness that's going on here. But yeah, everything is as it should be. Okay, I thought I'd try one without the lights on so you could really see, but you can see how much of this clear dome is really being lit up. So I'm thinking I might want to decrease the number of those window lights. There's the strobe in the back, strobing. I'd like to spin this whole thing around so you can see it from the back. Here you go, you can see they're covered with tape, but they're still strobing. There is a belly light that's strobing down here. These are covered with tape, but you see if I pull the tape off of here, just for right now. No, I don't want to go nuts with that. I want to kind of leave that. But you can see this is light blocking here that needs to happen because that plastic or the resin is so thin back there. But a good squirt of black tulip will take care of that. And then the underneath, yeah, that's all looking good. Okay, I think I'm liking that a lot better. What I did was go in and basically cut the amount of LEDs on that strip in half. So you can see, rather than it going all the way around, it's got 4 segments. And I think that's really going to do me better when it comes to not only making the batteries last longer, but I won't have to work as hard on the light blocking, plus the lights won't be blinding when it's all lit. So we will progress from there. The next step is to build the faux shuttle bay that's going to go in there. Not that there are faux shuttles, but the bay is faux. It's faux the shuttles. It's a shuttle bay. Okay, for the last bit of today's work, I went ahead and mocked up just what would be the barest of an indication of a shuttle bay. And the shuttle would sit in like that. Big enough for just barely big enough for a turntable. Or unless you expect the shuttle to back its way out, which, you know, is possible. They got computers that can do that. Most cars can parallel park better than a person can. So we do that. We pop a roof over top of it, and we let the light spill down to this roof, and that'll kind of give you a glow inside there. I'm going to let this set up, and then I'll paint it up tomorrow. But we've got that going, and that really only leaves the final bit of putting the reflective tape inside here tomorrow to block the windows, or the area between the windows. Get that all taken care of, and then the last thing to do would be to glue that down. Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday. Work is progressing on the Grissom. Now, my goal for this week is to get all of the construction done, all of the puttying done, all of the body work done, so that I can spend next week doing nothing but painting and decaling and finishing up. And we're well on the way to that. I am having to stop in the middle of construction and start doing some finished painting, because I've got a shuttle bay here that I don't know how apparent it is. I have a shuttle bay here, and I have scavenged some decals from a refit that I had turned into the Reliant, so that I no longer needed the refit decals. And it's always good to save those types of things, because you never know when you, much like scratch building, it's scratch decaling. And what that's going to allow me to do is to decorate the walls and the floor in here. There's this bit from the shuttle bay from the refit that I'm not going to need, and it's the same era as this, so it's going to be era appropriate. And it will also allow me to put some decals on the shuttle that I was able to print from the file that Keith sent me. And we're down to one last piece, which is a sad spectacle in and of itself. It is the top saucer, and there are plenty of things that need fixing with this, and plenty of things that I will be fixing with this. But most importantly, I need to block the inside of it, since this was cast in clear, or cast in translucent. It wasn't exactly clear, but you get what I'm saying. This is where the light shines out from the windows, and I need to block what I can with the silver tape, so that my paint on the outside doesn't have to work too hard. And what I've decided to do, I mean, the distinguishing feature on this Grissom is the three big shuttle bay. Slide that back over to there. The three big shuttle bay doors. And since the ones on the sides are going to be presenting me with a problem because of the make sure I'm not smacking too many things there on the table. You can see here we're running straight into the nacelle. There's not a lot of space in between that. Even on the, I would say, the actual Grissom, you run into that problem of the nacelle being right at the tip of the shuttle bay. I guess you would only use smaller shuttles and work bees to get in and out of that one. I'm going to close those off. Now, there's two schools of thought when you close those off. Do you make the door on the same plane as the outside wall, or do you make it on a recessed door? And I'm settling on a recessed door because it gives the same look when I do something like that and paint it dark. It's going to look like a nice recessed shuttle bay door, and this textured styrene kind of mimics what's going on in the rest of the ship on the top deck and on the sides of the pylons with this corrugated look. And so I'm going to cut those out and apply them to the insides of the doorways on the two sides. I also need to kind of thin down some of these walls that weren't cast very evenly so that I have a good surface to attach this to. I'm going to have to epoxy it and kind of clamp it in place while it's drying. Something like that. And then getting this ready to glue down or to epoxy down to the deck is the simple last thing that needs to get done. This is the roof for the shuttle bay, so that you'll see something like that. I'm not necessarily too worried about whether or not this meets the exact doorway, because this is going to sit in here something like that, and you'll be able to look around and see the shuttle that's sitting in there, but not much else. Now you can see the shuttle bays with the doors in front of them, or the closed door. I think that's a pretty good look myself. I'll paint that a dark color, and by the time you get the contrasting color in there, it'll all but disappear, but it'll give you that black look. But I like that little niche alcove thing that's going on there. And it looks similar on the other side. Okay, I've got the lights turned on, and you can see I still got a light leak issue here, particularly with that red light still showing up through the floor. So a little bit more tulip on that will take care of it, plus the fact that all of these doors will be painted, and I'll probably foil that from the inside to keep the light from leaking out. Looks a little bit better on this side with just a little of the green showing here. Been painting up the tiny shuttle, the wee shuttle, and I found some decals on the refit decal sheet that I'm going to be using on the side of it. That'll be nice and dressy. Now I've got a ceiling, a false ceiling put into the, well, you can't see it. I've got a ceiling put into the bay here to block the light. When you are looking in the bay and up, you won't see the strip of lights. And I think that'll work. I'm wondering whether the bay itself needs any particular lighting. I don't think that it does. I am trying to, I don't know if it's a fool's errand, to try to get all of that done with one 9-volt. I have a feeling it's already dimming down that strip lighting. Even though I cut the strip lighting amount in half yesterday, I can already see where it's starting to play out a little dimmer than I'd like it to. So I really can't pull off another lighting circuit for it, because all of my wiring is well and truly buried, and I can't make anything do double duty. So I'm going to have to see whether I just make myself happy with that or not. Okay, so I have put some decals down inside the shuttle bay. These are the dry dock lights from the refit base, but I think if you turn them on their side, they look like nice little status panels. And this is from the docking bay, or the shuttle bay in the refit, and it's got these nice 3 yellow lines and a stand clear, which is so much better than a no step. I get tired of seeing those no steps, but you put a nice stand clear there. And the nice thing about this decal is it actually is much longer, and when the whole ship is painted, the area where the door is closed, I can put indications of the rest of those yellow. So here's the some more of that yellow decal. I can lay some of it down in front of the closed door here on these sides, and they will end up looking like this kind of action here. Found a thinner piece of styrene to cut a ceiling panel out of, so hopefully that will let more light in. And that is basically your shuttle bay. Now I need to stick a shuttle in there, obviously, and that's drying on the popsicle stick. Need to see if there's anything I need to put on this back wall. Alrighty, the last decal is on the back wall, and that is a loving tribute to the brown circuit panel readout display that was in the classic Enterprise engineering room in over Scotty Station. The thing that the lights shifted back and forth and looked like a big circuit board, when in fact it is a decal from the Galileo of the primitive circuit board that was on the back access panel that I didn't use, because on that kit I closed up that access panel. So waste not, want not, I'll use the decal for a status board in the shuttle bay of the Grissom. Welcome back. I just stepped outside to check the mail, and great maker, it is beautiful out there. Not too warm, nice breeze, the sun is shining, the birds are singing. Why am I inside working on a starship? Should be outside working on a starship. So what I'm going to do is take the inside of the dome here that I need to be working on, and the tape and the scissors and the X-Acto knife and all of my accoutrements, and I'm going to sit on a deck with a cold beverage and work on taping up the inside of this upper saucer. So I'll be back when it's done. Okay, so we're getting ready for probably the last one on this build, but in every build there is the butt puckering moment, and this is going to be a butt puckering moment because I am ready. I don't know why this is all of a sudden rocking back and forth. This base was never this problematic before. There must be something under it. We're ready to glue the saucer down, and that's going to entail putting a ring of probably JB weld down, because this is a clear piece or a translucent piece, and it has a tendency to transfer light all the way to the edge. So if I put JB weld down, it will also light block the edge, which is important. So I'm going to pencil out some lines here to make sure I don't put any weld where the doors are going to be. And then it's going to be a question of putting down a fine bead and then clamping the bejesus out of it. Actually, I'm only going to be able to put 3 clamps on it. One both sides and one on the front. I'm not going to be able to clamp anything on the back because I can't clamp anything on the back because I can't get to it top and bottom. But I can clamp here, here, and here. So we're just going to have to count on that being held down by peer pressure. Well, let me tell you a tale of woe. This is one of those days when having 2 people here would have been much more preferable. I had to back up and redo a bunch of the landing bay, because after all that careful work and fun and consideration and decaling and all of that, when time came to attach the top of the saucer down to the bottom, try as I thought I had, the decal on the floor was not centered. So when I put the opening down, the decal was way off to the side. Those little yellow lines were way off to the side, which caused all kinds of red flags and sirens and OCD going off, and there's just no way I could have stood for it. Now, actually, the whole bay is a bit off, but because you only see straight back, when you look in from the sides, you don't really gauge that the walls are off a little bit. So what I had to do was put a new floor in. I scraped up the decal, scraped up the paint on the floor, but all of this is happening while the JB weld is already laid down and in place and starting to dry, or starting to cure, which thankfully it is a slow curing epoxy. If it were anything like any of the clear epoxies that I normally use, it would have set up 3 times by now, and I would be scraping that off and getting the riding belt sander out to get rid of the residue. That didn't happen. The JB weld is nice and slow curing, so I basically pried the top back off, scraped the floor out, put a new floor in, cut a really thin piece of sheet stock, covered it in gray vinyl because I was looking for something that I could have that was instantly dry. Instantly dry was the key point because as I said, the glue was the JB weld was setting up. So I took a piece of plastic, covered it in vinyl, glued it on top of the floor. So right now the floor has no decals in it whatsoever. But I was able to get the top back down, glued in place, taped down, sculpted around the side where the big gap here is. I sculpted that line with some JB weld. We're going to let that cure all night long and before we come back to it in the morning. But I've turned the lights on in the bay. We do have a nice lit bay. You can see the back wall. So let me raise that up. You can see that back wall and the side walls, which is the important thing. I'm going to see if I can slide a decal in there tomorrow, obviously not today. We're going to let all of this JB weld around the edge cure up, and we'll see what kind of mess we are working with in the morning. Well, good day everyone. It's Thursday. It's the gateway to the weekend, and I've done a little cleanup, a quick how do you do on the table here. As we get into this stage of building, it's easier and easier to let the amount of crapola overwhelm you, so it's easier just to keep it clean than to lose some piece that you might want to keep. Here's where we're sitting. Yesterday I put all of I wrestled hand to hand with putting this disc down and getting the edges somewhat nice. Ooh, I've already pulled off a window mask. Well, that tells me it's time to cut some new window masks. But I want to see what we kind of come up with here as far as results. I'm expecting to have to do a lot of dressing of that edge today. We've got JB weld drying overnight. We're coming back to this. We're going to, well, I'm just going to shut up and do this. Coming off pretty clean at this point. Yeah, there's another window mask. These window masks are really clean, though. That's a good thing. The shape of the windows are looking really nice. Not so shabby. Not so shabby. I think I take a first sanding around that and see where we're landing. Now, quick outline of the next few steps of things to do. I want to get this get the JB weld from yesterday sanded down and cleaned up. Replace any window masks that need to have been done. I also want to get some wide transfer tape, and I want to protect the areas that I've already painted, this area and under here and under that top deck, because we're going to start doing the painting. And the painting, I want to get the bodywork done this week, and then we can start off Monday with the painting on next week, and that includes getting all of the primers on here, getting the edges touched up where there might be something that still needs to be addressed, all of that, so that when we're ready to hit this thing on Monday, it will be to put the final coats of paint down. So the better job I did yesterday, the less amount of work I'm going to have to do today. So I'm going to take a quick sanding stick on that and see how she looks. Okay, so I've got this joint cleaned out. I've got the area sanded around it, and I'm pondering my choices now about what to smooth that out with, because there is a rather rough gully of a joint here that could stand to be filled in, and I'm wondering if it would be better to do it with A, tulip, B, Bondo spot putty, or C, what would be my third choice? Epoxy sculpt. Well, it's too fine of a thing for epoxy sculpt, really. A nice liquid solution would be the best. So I'm thinking what I want to do is just do a very thin line of the Bondo spot putty in around there, and then smooth it out with either a Q-tip or a some small piece of a brush or a doweling or whatever to smooth that out, just to clean it up some. It's just that the glue joint, the JB Weld joint, is a little rough. So we've got a nice thin line of the glazing spot putty here, and it went in very nicely. I used the pointy sculpting tool to kind of push it down in and smooth the sides off as I went. But we're going to let that cure now. Next step would be to spray the whole thing with a primer, which is why I have these blue shapes masked off, since I don't want to have to do that work again. I will throw some tape over this deck so that I don't get any overspray on it. No sense doing that work twice. And I will probably, I will mask off these grills, since it's a fairly obvious shape, easy enough to do. And then I don't have to worry about painting those again, or at least not the full extent of them again. I realize there'll be plenty of opportunities to revisit the painting on some of these shapes, but no sense making it too difficult for myself. So we take a break and we come back to it in a bit. Look at that pretty ship. Yes, it's had a coat of the primer filler on it, which is a lighter gray, and you can see where a lot of these seams have disappeared, but it also does that job that primer does so well, which is to show the shortcomings. And it actually reminded me of a spot on this side that I I put more putty on this morning, but never sanded before I hit it with primer. So it, yes, I just confessed, Mr. Compressor, I forgot to sand this before I hit it with the primer, so that's why it looks especially rough. But good enough so that the next step will be, after I've sanded this and addressed some of these seams, some of the gaps and rough spots, the next step will be the white primer. You can see I've got the Shuttle Bay stuffed with a paper towel there to keep the paint from getting in there. But we're ever so slight amounts of filler. That's just a bad angle on the bottom of that saucer. I can't do much about that. But I can hit these seams lightly and then hit everything with a white primer next. And that will be the last thing I do before I start putting the top coats on. One last thing for tonight, and that was to put a coat of the white primer over top of the sanded bits. I did sand up that seam, and we're going to switch to white primer now, because there's no sense putting gray over something that's going to end up being white anyway. So I'm going to let this set up, maybe do one more pass of cleanup around that joint there, and then we'll be ready for top colors next week. But I might even start doing top colors tomorrow, depending on how much I get done. I was playing around with the gunmetal that goes in the center there. There's a gunmetal ring with a more of a brighter silver dome, so I was playing around with some of that just to throw some color at it and see what stuck. Hello all, good morning. It is Friday. It is the last work day of the week, and it'll be the last day I'm working on the Grissom for this week as well. I've put I painted all this white yesterday. You saw that. Hopefully you saw that. And today I've put down the masks on the areas that I wish to keep white. And I'm putting on some grays, and I'm going to do some faux plating just with some cards and make some darks and lights. You've seen me do this before. And then I can do a white blending coat over top of all of that. There is a series of darker gray boxes that go, well, I'll show you here. You can You can see the darker gray boxes that go on either side of the blued out areas. Those I have yet to put down. I think what I'd like to do is to remove these masks until you see let you see the white, and then do the dark boxes, and then do the blending over top of it. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I said I wasn't going to be doing a lot of this type of painting until next week. It just took off, and next thing you know, I'm starting to do it. So we're going to maybe try to not slow down so much, but to take my time with it. I got the mask set up for this area so that I can mask this off now. And this area, of course, I've yet to paint. But yeah, it's coming along pretty quickly. I just, started masking things. Next thing you know, I'm painting. Okay, so I've got the overly patterned top deck done. Yes, these are obvious. Yes, these will get blended back. But now I need to remove these masks that are keeping the white areas white, because there are some very much darker squares that need to go here and here on both sides. And those I have got masks for, and I need to do those next. And then I will do an overall blending of all of it, protecting the blue, of course, all the time. And that should give us our final look. Okay, so here's how the top deck looks before the white blending coat goes on. And also replayed some of this nonsense going on down here, but mostly interested in that today. The saucer part of it, this part of it, is much more of a stark white with just a little bit of accenting in it than this. This has more activity going on, more gray going on. So I said I wasn't going to get carried away with painting today, but I got carried away with painting today. So let's do some white blending coats on that. I think the problem at this point is that it's too high up on the desk. I need to find a lower thing to put it on, because I'm having to spray. I like being able to see on top of it as I'm painting, so I might have to rig up something that will be slightly less tall. Here you can see the reference I'm using for the top deck of the well, this is the Pegasus, but of the Grissom when I'm doing it. And you can see that there is a definite white on the saucer, and this whole deck is more of a gray because you can see the obvious white standing out against it. So it's meant to be a shade or two darker than white. And I may lighten up the blue that I'm using to make it fall more in line with that color. I've been looking at that and then going back to my kit and realizing that maybe my blue is a little bit too deep. So we may have to lighten that up some. But you can see what's ahead for the nacelle tops, and how thin those nacelle tops are when you compare them to how fat the nacelles I have are. You can see this top deck and also the top of the pontoon also share that same basic gray color. And here you can see how the top of my deck is looking. Now I've got everything situated on it. I've got everything masked off that I want to keep the other color. I'm going to let this dry for a little bit. I'm going to stop touching it with my fingers, and then I'm going to come back and put maybe one more whitish blending coat on it. These are still a little bit too dark. Blend those down a little bit more, and then call it quits for the week. So I've just spent the last few minutes repainting these. I wasn't quite happy with the color I had before, so I took that color that I had before and mixed a little white into it to make it a little brighter, a little lighter, and not quite so much into the navy blue, but more into the, I don't know, mid-range aquas. But I think it looks a lot better. And I'll strip these masks off now, and that'll call it a week. Well, here's a lovely shot with all of the strobes I strobe in. 1, 2, 3, 4 at the top, and 2 on the bottom, or 1 in the front that you can't quite see, and 1 on the bottom that you can't quite see from this angle. But this is probably the most complete, or from this angle it looks the most complete. You have the top deck mostly painted. There'll be some weathering on this a little bit, but it's starting to look like something now. Of course, I've got all of the bottom to worry about. I haven't even touched the bottom side, so plenty of painting work to be done for next week. And a view from the front. Didn't want to leave that out. You can see the wee shuttle in the wee shuttle bay. I'm really hoping once I put the decals on, it's going to add that bit of flavor. And of course, taking those masks off the windows will help, because right now it looks very chunky and blocky, and I'm hoping that the accent colors and the decals will make it look more streamlined. No sense turning on the other windows since they're all blocked up anyway. But there you go. And on that note, that's going to bring us to the end of week 5 on the Grissom project. We've got one more week in it. I think all of the little touchy touches and the painting and the decals, I certainly don't want to rush because they are long and multitudinous. So all of that will take up next week, and then we'll off to something else. But we've got one more good week on it. And this is about the length of a project that I like. 5-6 weeks on a project. After about the 5th into the 6th weeks, when I start losing interest in it and going, wanting to go on to something new. So I think this is going to turn out to be just about the right amount of time for a model build. So until next week, when we'll be finishing up the Grissom, y'all be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Go outside and play if you can. The night weather's nice. And we'll see you here next time.